Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Above the Bar podcast, where each week we belly up to the bar with a new guest, find out what they do, who they are, and what makes them great. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. Alrighty, folks, welcome back to the Above the Bar podcast. It's your host, Sean. We've bellied up to the bar on this. It's the first Wednesday in December. I just realized that. Yeah, I had to think about that for a second. This first Wednesday in December, and we're doing it right. See, what I'm doing is exactly why we have our guest here, because as you all know, I don't prepare the introduction. It's completely improv. Ha ha ha. So to make sure that my improv is actually right proved, that's right word or not, but to do this for me, joining me all the way from the other side of the Hudson River, because I'm on this side and she's on that side. And I forgot to double check because I'm going to butcher everybody's last name. We all know that. Let's see how I butcher Kat's last name. It's Miss Kat Koppett.
It's Koppett, like stop it.
Stop it and Koppett. So see that? You get a little cheers and everything, Kat. So, hi, Miss Kat. How are you?
I'm great. I already have a story to share with you.
Wait a second. Already?
Yeah. So, Koppett is a made-up name. My father was a sports writer.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. And he was born in Moscow.
All right.
And came to the States when he was about 5 years old, grew up under the shadow of Yankee Stadium. And the way he tells it, his last name was Koppeljovic, and he had an editor who said, "Oh, that won't fit on the byline. You have to change it." Of course, that's not true, right? It just was not super cool to have an immigrant name in the 30s and 40s and 50s. So he changed it to Koppett, and he specifically, as a very rational guy, spelled it this way, thinking that everybody would be able to pronounce it perfectly. And of course, nobody knows how to say it.
Nobody, but I like it. It's a good story. He improved his name, and that goes straight into what we're talking about today, folks, is how can improv training help improve your business, what we do every day. And if you're in the sales world, you realize that at some point in every conversation, you have to put on some improv. You have to do some things that you didn't plan to do. So we're going to be talking about that. But as we get into all this, let's go ahead and take care of some house cleaning. As always, folks, over my right shoulder. And look, I'm going to go ahead and say this now. Listen, Justin Tucker is the greatest kicker in the history of the NFL. Simple enough. He has a 70% accuracy rating this year. He has missed way too many field goals. Tuck, I love you, brother. Please hang up the cleats. It is time, 13 years. Call Matt Stover. He will tell you it's time. He was another GOAT, and it's time to go. But as always, I had to get that PSA out for a moment to get it off my chest. We have the big board for stickering and calls. Maybe you have a theater group of your own. You have a show that you're doing, a podcast. Doesn't matter what it is. Reach out to me on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. Our Facebook or our email is the above the bar podcast at gmail.com. And our website is the above the bar podcast.com. Reach out. Let me know what you got going on. We'll get you connected where to send that sticker to. And whatever you got going on, I'll read about it live here on the air. And if you think I'm full of it, if you see this one right here, this is Food Americana. That is a friend of ours, David, who was on the show. That's his sticker. He's the guy. You'll like this one, Kat. He's the guy who created Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives.
Wow.
That was his idea. He was a TV reporter for, I can't remember if it was ABC or NBC, and he had the idea. And then he created Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives. That was his idea.
Nice.
And he's doing pretty good off of it.
I guess so.
He's doing all right. It's been around for a little bit of time. The guy was not the creator of it. So make sure you reach out to us and let us know what we got going on. But also, we got to talk about the people that pay the bills around here, and that's Budget Blinds of East Greenbush, Budget Blinds of Hudson and Cooksaki, and Budget Blinds of Schoharie. North America's largest window treatment company, focused on everything from shade, shutters, blinds, drapery. even do tint, folks, and different types of window films. They cover it all. And for the month of December, everybody likes technology during Christmas time, don't they, Kat? Like that's always it. Like somebody wants a cell phone or
Mhm.
let me ask, at any point in time, did you ask for a record player for Christmas?
Yes.
So did I. Twice. Once as a kid and once
Wow.
as an adult. That was what I wanted to do.
Amazing.
Isn't it crazy? But so technology is always one of those things that we all want during the holidays, and to help out with that, Budget Blinds of East Greenbush, Hudson and Cooksaki and Schoharie are doing 25% off of all motorized window treatments. And folks, if you haven't seen a motorized window treatment before, they do everything from these little wands that have 3 buttons on them, up, down, stop, all the way to things that you can put on your cell phone, set timers, talk to your smart devices, tell them to raise and lower your window treatments. It's actually a bunch of different things, and you integrate it. And some people say, well, I don't need that. Well, if you're like most of us, we travel nowadays, we go places. Those motorized window treatments, yeah, they're going to cost you a little bit more, but you can put them on your cell phone and you can set timers to make it look like somebody's in the
Oh,
house raising and lowering the window treatments.
that's great.
That is where we're at today. You have your lights that are on timers, you have your window treatments on timers. Make that house look like somebody's there, make it a little bit secure. Reach out to them. And as always, folks, if you tell them that you're there to belly up to the bar, whatever sale they've got going on, they're going to give you an extra 5% off just for telling them that you're there to belly up to bar. That's Budget Blinds of East Greenbush, Hudson and Cooksaki, and Schoharie, New York. All right. All that's done, Miss Kat.
Well, now I want to get new window treatments for every room in my house.
You should. I mean, and I appreciate you improvising that. But I'm going to say everything today. But you know what? I love that you do this whole training on improv, but I don't think people, and people might, and I'm gonna get to your background here in a second, but I think most people might be thinking, well, is this just like teaching people how to shoot from the hip, or in sales we call them gunslingers, where no
Yeah.
matter what it is, you can just kind of be like,
Yeah.
I got something for that. I got something for that.
Yeah.
But how did you get in? Let's start with that. Like, how did you get into the improv world and improv in general?
Yeah. Well, let me start by saying some of it is that, right? I mean, there is a piece of it that's thinking on your feet and being, able to respond and be flexible in the moment. And it's much more than that, as we'll talk about. I became an improviser through the theater. I was a classically trained scripted actor.
Oh, wow.
In New York. But I had teachers who couldn't quite, they kept saying things to me like, you're too smart to be an actor, which is a stupid thing to say, right? Or don't think so much. And I couldn't quite figure out what they were saying. But then I was in this theater company with a guy named Aaron Sorkin, who maybe some of you have heard.
I know the name Aaron Sorkin, absolutely.
He created The West Wing and Social Network and a bunch of things. Anyway, I was in this theater company with him, and someone in the company knew an improviser who came in and did a master class with us. And most of the actors were like, ugh, improv. It was very separate from the theater.
How dare you? How dare you bring this in here? We are actors and actresses.
Right? But for me, this teacher was able to help me do something that my theater teachers hadn't done, which was to understand what they were saying to me, which is be more present, trust your impulses, don't censor yourself so much. And she gave me actual activities and exercises to help do that. And then what happened was I was teaching English as a second language as my day job. And I was working with this improv company. And my students in the improv company started to say things like, I wish my boss knew how to accept and build with ideas the way we do in improv. Or I wish my team at work knew how to collaborate and co-create the way we do as an improv team. Will you come teach us improv in business? And I was like, well, I'm kind of a starving actor. Corporations have money, I guess so. And I started to do it, and then very quickly went back and got a master's in organizational psychology because I didn't want to be a charlatan. I didn't want to be selling snake
Right.
oil. I wanted to see if it actually had some value. So that's how I got into the sort of applied improv side.
Yeah, and I find that completely fascinating. So, I mean, especially if you're coming from that classically trained actor, actress world where, you know, we hear stories about some of them. I can see his name. He played Joker in Batman, the one that he died.
Heath Ledger?
Heath Ledger, thank you. You know, guys that like they get so like immersed
Mhm.
in what they're doing that they lose themselves in this. But improv to me is, and correct me if I'm wrong, improv's just the opposite.
Mm.
It's almost like, yeah, I know the script says happy, but I like the word glad right now. That's the word that's in my head, so that's what I'm gonna go with. I mean, am I understanding it right?
Yeah, well, what comes up for me when you ask that is, as improvisers, we are acting, but we're also writing and directing all at the same time. Like we have to do all of that. We're writing the play as we're doing it. So there is a way that we're having to be more flexible. You know, we don't have 6 months to prepare our character and get in character in that sort of method acting way. But there's other ways in which we're actually more authentic because we are, learning to trust what's happening and respond in the moment. But yeah.
And you're still teaching this. So when you first were going in and doing this, and this is the only thing that's coming to mind to me, did you improvise how you were going to teach it even, or was like you had a, because I mean that's a weird thing to me. Like
Yeah.
if you're an improv teacher, you would think like, well, maybe the whole thing's improv how you're teaching it, or it was a structured lineup like, hey, this is how we're going to do this.
It is such a good question, Sean. I think there are a lot of improvisers who, especially now that it's become sort of a thing to take improv into business, there are a lot of improvisers who think either I can just improvise what I'm doing as a teacher, even improv teachers who do that, or who say, I'll just take what I'm doing on the improv stage and translate it to business exactly without making any contextual adaptations. And both of those are mistakes. I had a wonderful improv teacher and director named Laura Livingston at one of the companies I worked with in New York City, Freestyle Repertory Theater. And she used to say, it's
Say
my
that slower. Say that theater slower. You were like,
Freestyle Repertory Theater in New York City. They
okay.
still do a lot of work in schools and shows. She was one of my great mentors, Laura Livingston. And she used to say her job as a teacher and a director was to build the jungle gym so that people could swing on it. Right.
I
So,
love that.
and I think the way that I think about that is, as a teacher, as a trainer, as a facilitator, it's my job to be very thoughtful and deliberate about setting context and having a plan so that people can learn what they need to learn or play in the ways that they need to play inside of that.
See, I love that idea. So when you first then how have you seen then your style for teaching improv within the business world? I mean, because again, I hear it as somebody who loves sales, and this is what I do. To me, it's a simple transition. Like if I was a sales manager and somebody with your skill set came to me and said, "Hey, I would love to train how we can use this in a business setting to adapt to situations, to take the sting out of conversations, to do it everything." But how was that first? How was it perceived when like that first couple groups were like, "Well, we want you to come in"? Were they already in leadership roles that they could bring you, or did you have to sell it to somebody?
Yeah, I think it, for me personally, and this was a long time ago, right? There wasn't even a name for what we were doing. It was kind of weird. But I think what happened in my case was my students or my clients were selling me and they were helping me understand the value. I was very skeptical. I was like, really? Improv and business? Like, what do we know about business? And I had been doing, I went to grad school. I learned very, very quickly in that organizational development program that the fundamental thing was that most people were starving for these experiences that we had as improvisers, which was the ability to get in touch with their impulses, express themselves, be seen and heard, right? Like just at that fundamental level, there was something we got to do that most people didn't. And it was useful in that way. But then the next level was, what are the skills that a leader needs in business? What are the skills that a salesperson needs? And what I learned sort of through my clients and through doing it was improv isn't a metaphor, right? What we're doing as improvisers, we're making up scenes and songs and stories on stage in front of a live audience, right? That's our goal. But the skills that we're building, the muscles that we're exercising to do that, are the same muscles that a salesperson needs to have a conversation with a new client and listen. Skills like listening and receiving from the other person, paying attention to, we call them in improv, offers, right? So
what is it now? What is an offer in improv?
An offer in improv is anything that the other person says or does or that exists in the environment, right? And it is my obligation as an improviser to first and foremost receive those offers, to listen. So we have a whole set of work that we work with leaders and teams simply on listening better, being able to receive and understand and listen deeply. The next step is to accept those offers. If someone says like, this is too expensive, I can argue with you, or I can, the famous term from improv, yes and it, say, oh, I accept, I may not agree with you that it's too expensive, but I accept that you feel like it. And now I can listen for, why do you feel like it's too expensive? Is it because you just don't have, you see the value, but you don't have the money? Is it that you feel like you're getting cheated? Is it that you think you can get it cheaper somewhere else? Or do you just feel like you would need to dominate me and win in this interaction, right? I can notice all of those things. And then how do I accept that and build with it and then make an offer back?
Do people hate to argue with you?
I don't
Like
know.
I feel
That.
like I feel like arguing with you would just be such a pain in the ass. Like it would be this situation where I'm like, Kat, this is BS. Well, yes, but tell me, what do you mean it's BS? Like,
tell me more about why you think it's BS.
Why do you think it's BS? She's improving me
like,
now.
I just want to fight with you and tell you why you're stupid.
Yeah, like it's like, God, she's getting me now. But because all the things you're saying, as somebody like, I'm not classically trained and I'm not improv trained, but I am heavily sales trained.
Mm-hmm.
Like I have a lot of sales training. I listen to a lot of sales books. I enjoy that. And I know it sounds hard. Like when people are like, you enjoy that, I'm like, yes. I have sitting in my queue for my books right now, Napoleon Hill, 15 hours masterclass. Like, and I'm like, I got to finish this other one called King Within, which another person recommended to me. And I was like, and it's like 3 hours. I'm like, all right, I finished that one. And then I'm going to get in this Napoleon Hill. And there's like 15 hours of Napoleon Hill just spouting off about success and sales and business. And I know anybody else would be like, I would rather suck start of my car than like listen to this. But I'm like, this is amazing.
It's a great superpower if you like selling, right?
It's so but I hear what you're saying, and it just all translates back and forth, because this is, we talk in sales, like your biggest weapon is not your mouth, it's your ears. It's, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth. Shut the hell up and listen.
Yep.
Which it sounds like that's a lot of improv. Am I hearing that right?
Exactly right. That's exactly right. In sales, it's the sort of the difference between a feature and a benefit. Like I can have this wonderful feature of all these improv things, but if it doesn't meet your need, then it's not a benefit to you. So rather than just spraying my ideas, I have to first be able to receive. And then that next skill is like, how do we then co-create, right? How do I receive an offer, and we build that together? And that's not, we're doing that on an improv stage, but it's exactly the same as a sales conversation. It's exactly the same as a leader facilitating a team meeting.
See, now I've got to ask this question. So this is one of, as somebody who was also a sales trainer, this used to drive me up a wall. And I'm wondering if you have an equaling term in the improv world. And as you've trained folks, and look, folks, and I forgot to grab this. And I shot myself in the big toe with one of the big things that I always get. I didn't run your banner. We didn't have a banner for you talking about like all the different ways. Listen, folks, if you want to find what Kat's got going on, and I'm going to fix your banner right now. I can't believe I forgot to put this up, but I know what it is already. So, and listen, folks, I'm not going to try to pronounce it again, but if you're looking to see what Kat's got going on and you want to know what she's happening, make sure you check out Koppett.com. That's Koppett. See what she's got happening, see what's going on in her world, find out about things. And we're going to talk about this practical improvisational theater techniques to enhance creativity. We're going to talk about that. But I love this term, but it gets missed in the sales world when you're talking about features and benefits. That's what reminded me of it, where people like to go like the car had like a car. It's got airbags, it's got leather seats, it's got really nice radio and you'll be able to listen to all of it really loud and you'll be comfortable. And they miss this key phrase called a bridging statement. And a bridging statement is when you list all those features and you say what this is going to do for you, how this is going to benefit you, how this is going to change your life, where this is going to take you, what this is going to make happen for you. It's just this quick thing that then goes into what that benefit is. And then you say the benefit. Is there something in the improv world that you guys do similar, or is this something that you train folks? Because I feel like if you're into sales, anybody can know features, anybody can know benefits, but if you can't, I got it. You got your, I know these are, you know me. Do you have your, yeah, there it is, Kat. I see. I love it. Kat's got them too. If you don't know what we're doing, folks, go check out the live video. You can turn on hand gestures on your stuff, and then you get all kinds of cool stuff to go on. But is there some similar form in the improv world to a bridging statement?
You're making me think about storytelling skills, really, right?
Okay.
So another one of the skills and serving the scene. So another deep body of our work is just about that. How do we help leaders or communicators of any kind influence others effectively by making meaning, right? By helping people understand, here's the vision, or here's why we're making this change, or here's what I need you to do differently, right? I'm going to inspire you to action. And really that's a storytelling skill. So in some ways, a bridging statement is connecting the narrative thread or helping your listener make meaning from the data that you're spraying, right?
Absolutely. And see, and it's interesting. So there is a connection in the storytelling process of improv to get to there. So how has this grown for you? Because I know you just started off and you've got your I love this. Training to imagine, practical improvisational theory to enhance creativity. I just love the name of it.
I'm so glad to hear that. Here's the story about the name.
Yeah.
When I was not that long out of grad school, I had moved back to California. I was working for one of the very first people who started an applied improvisation company that label didn't even quite exist yet. And a friend took me to Book Expo, and I ran into a publisher. I'd read another book that they had published. My lights are blinking, so hopefully.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out if that was on my end or if I was about to start season.
If you lose me because my electricity goes out, I'll call you back on the phone.
Are you getting? Is it storming pretty good out by you?
It was snowing earlier, so I don't know what's happening.
Well, you're on the other side of the river. You're on the Albany Schenectady side. I'm on the Rensselaer side.
Yeah. It didn't look terrible a half hour ago, but I don't know what's going on.
No, you got something happening.
Just I'll improvise. I'll try to find my way back.
Yes.
Just in case we weren't feeling like this was risky enough, we'll play with the power. Anyway, so what was the question?
Well, so you're like, this is hilarious.
It's scary.
So you were that, or your husband's out in the hallway?
He could be. He would be that way. I think he's.
You were saying how you went to a book expo and to work on the name.
The long version of the story is, anyway, they decided they agreed to. I said you should do a book on improv for training, And he said, we can't do that. And I said, yes, you can. Here's how you do it. And he bought the idea. He was into it. But they wouldn't let me put improv in the main title, the word improv, because it was too crazy. It was too silly. It was too wacky and out there. So they came up with a title, Training to Imagine. I'm glad to hear you like it.
Well, I do. It because it feeds to the improv. So now this person that you met, now is that Teresa McLeod?
So right. So that was this book. This is a second edition. Routledge just acquired this book, and there's going to be a third edition coming out next year.
Okay.
But this is the first 2001. This was is the book on improv, and it was published this year. Teresa and I, who I was working for Meta as a consultant, and I was mashed up with another consultant. We became friends and started working outside of that work together. And all of that work that we developed through Meta and some work that I did with PwC, we ended up putting in this book, which is about, it's not specifically an improv
That's
book.
called
The Facilitation Advantage. The subtitle is How to Drive Impact, Build Relationships, and Lead with Influence. It is very improv informed. There's a whole chapter on storytelling, a whole chapter on presence, whole chapter on adapting for impact in the moment. But it's not explicitly an improv book. And it's for leaders or individuals, salespeople, anyone who has to communicate, lead, facilitate. Right. So rather than just professional facilitators, anyone to use the facilitation skills like you're doing right now in your podcast to connect with people. And
yeah, I got to tell you, one of the things that I find so fascinating with a lot of this is, even though we know that you're, the improv piece for you, it sounds like it's still kind of a little bit like difficult to throw that word improv into it until they're actually in front of you. So how do people initially react then when you're like, here you are, you're getting ready to facilitate this training, you're ready to go into it. And I think this is important for anyone who maybe does something that to them feels like it'll work, but maybe it's on the fringe until you get into it. And now I don't think what you do would be considered fringe.
Right.
But how is some of that reaction when you're like, so I've been trained, I've studied with this one. Oh, and by the way, I'm an improv teacher, and part of this is going to be learning about improv storytelling.
Yeah, it's insightful. I think sometimes people are coming looking for it, right? Like that's what they want. They've heard about it. They want it. That's easy. But it's still true that a lot of people get terrified by the word improv. Right. Sometimes I'll joke, someone will introduce me and say she uses improv, and I'll say, okay, raise your hand if you heard the word improv and just realized there was somewhere else you needed to be, that you had you have to go to, right? Because people do get,
I gotta
oops. I just, emergency, sorry. Because I think that people have associations with improv of like, oh, you're going to make me look stupid. I'm going to have to be wacky. I'm going to have to be really funny. And like, I don't want to do that. You're going to make me look foolish. And why? What does this have to do with our work? And I understand that. Like, that's why I went back to grad school. That's why I was like, I don't want to be, I mean, play for play's sake is great, but I don't want to make people do silly things or introduce them to improv if it's not actually going to be aligned with their needs and their desire, right? I don't want to be selling something that they don't want or need. And so to me, what's very important is that I can make that link, right? So that I start with who are you? What do you want to be able to do differently? How do you want to be supported individually or as a team? And then how can I help with that? And often it's informed by improv and storytelling, because that's what people are coming to me for in terms of, developing their brand or their personality or their ability to influence or their ability to sell. But the point isn't improv, right? The point is listening, accepting and building, adapting in the moment, collaborating, sharing control and responsibility. And so when I talk about improv, I often start with, here's what you want to be able to do differently. Improv is the gym for exercising and building those muscles, right? Improvisers, because of what we do, have developed mindsets and skills and activities and techniques for helping you get better at the things that you feel like you need to be better as a leader or a salesperson or a team member.
See, it's see, I love the idea of it. I can't tell you how much I would have loved at any point in time, especially when I was first coming up in that sales piece, learning some of this, because I always felt like I was a good storyteller, but I know where one of the techniques I had to learn, which was how to stop the story.
Yes, absolutely.
Which really can, and what I mean by that, folks, if you're in that world, some of us, there's different types of sales personality. I am a rapport salesperson. I'm a relationship builder.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I love a lot of my clients to the point that like people will invite me to their homes afterwards, like, hey, we want you to come out and hang out with us completely outside of the business. And I have to kind of be like, oh, I really have built this friendship with this person, and remind myself that like, no, you spent 2-3 hours with these people. You've built a friendship with them, and be okay with it, because sometimes I forget that. But, and look, folks, if you're looking to see what Kat's going on, again, it's Koppett, KOPPETT.com. You can see everything she's got going on. So what is it, and I've got it. I might be running around because I have this tendency as I'm looking at my notes here.
I'm tracking.
You won the North American Simulation and Gaming Association. Something, how do you pronounce this? Eiffel
Reynolds, I think.
Lifetime Achievement Award.
Yeah.
For what?
It's kind of silly.
It's not silly. It's a Lifetime Achievement Award.
Yeah. So NASAGA is an organization that focuses on simulations and gaming techniques for learning, often in academia and in the business world. One of their big thought leaders is a man named Sivasailam Tyagarajan, or Tyagi, who is a guru in the area of learning games and interactive activities. He wrote the foreword to the Improv book and is a mentor of mine. And they give this award every year. And I guess they gave it to me for my part in starting and promoting and growing the field of applied improvisation.
What year did you start this? Like, Lifetime Achievement Awards are normally like 20, 30 years.
It makes me sound very old. So as I say, Training to Imagine was came out in 2001.
It's not that long ago.
25 years ago or so. I guess I started in the field probably in 97, coming out of school.
Don't think 2001 was over 20 some years.
I don't know. I think I just got lucky, right? The field is really not very much older than that, right? There's an international association called the Applied Improvisation Network. We had our first conference as sort of a track of NASAGA, and then they kicked us out because we were going to overwhelm the whole thing. But I think in 99 or 2000, something like that, maybe 2001. So the whole field of applied improvisation isn't much older than that 25 years or so.
I mean, so you're like mom or like the hot aunt. Like, you go with the hot aunt of improv theater. I mean, because
my daughter, at one of those early conferences, I was secretly pregnant. Like, I wasn't pregnant enough to tell anybody, but I was like sort of nauseous and sipping lemon juice and facilitating programs. And my daughter's about to graduate college. So
I love it. I mean, Kat, this is, just the entire thing, because that's the other side of it. As I'm listening to you, as interesting as this is, and I love everything about this, because you also, and we're going to talk about the Mopco Improv Theater in a second here. Mm-hmm. The other side of it is not many people can say not just that they were at the concept of an industry, but you truly helped birth an entire industry. Listen, folks, Kat and I are
somebody else would have if I hadn't been around, right?
Bullshit. Save it for somebody else. Kat and I are on a call almost every Wednesday together, a networking call, which is that it's the best networking call because we don't talk about anything of any networking value at all. We just talk. Like at some point, something is said and we're off on tangents.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I have a wealth of worthless knowledge and I get into a lot of it.
Yeah.
But I mean, Kat, I want you to process it, and you may have processed this before, but you helped birth an entire training industry that was not there before. How does that feel?
Sometimes it feels great. I mean, it's very nice to. I do believe that a lot of the principles and values and techniques that we have in the world of improv are really useful for humanity, and that's probably what's going to save the world, if anything is our ability to listen to each other and support each other and collaborate well, right? So in that sense, it feels great. It also sometimes, if we're going to be really honest, like sitting here at the bar drinking my wine, I'll tell you, it also sometimes feels like I'm like an old jazz musician sitting in the back of the bar watching Elvis Presley be really famous and successful. And I'm like,
well, you know that like you set it up.
I started this.
Listen here, kid, I'm the one who actually started this long before he ever knew what it was.
Second City now has a huge applied improv organization.
Oh,
There's like millions of people, thousands of people all over the world who are better salespeople than I am, shinier than I am, more funded than I am, who are doing great things. And so there's a little bit I probably shouldn't admit that out loud,
but you know what, though?
Like that.
But none of them are shit without you.
Well, I think you're overstating. I appreciate it. I really do think you're overstating it. I think what I think, here's what I think I contributed. I think I wasn't the first applied improv book. There's a book called Improv Inc. by a guy named Robert Lowe. When I was in grad school, I reached out to him and said, help me, what do you think of this field? But I was one of the first books. There's another book called Improv Wisdom by a professor at Stanford. But I was one of the first books that my intention was to really break it down for non-improvisers, was the idea in my head, for learning and development professionals. Here are the principles of improv. And then here are the second half of the book is just a bunch of facilitator guides for activities. And so I was able to articulate what was happening in the field in a way that spoke to people. And what it actually did was spawn this field in a lot of ways. There are a lot of people who say, oh, I took your book and that's how I started my business, or that's how I got into the field. So that's why I have influence, is because I just happened to write it down early on and in a way that spoke to people and made it clear how to actually implement these ideas and philosophies. But it is a absolutely crowdsourced, co-created field that, has thousands of really brilliant people building it all the time.
You know what it reminds me of, Kat? Here's what this will be what I'll say then. Mm-hmm. So you're like, when you build a house, you have a foundation and framework. Mm-hmm. Nobody ever sees those things. We all know the studs are behind the wall, but all we see is the paint, the drywall, and the paintings and the fluffy furniture. That's everybody else. You created the foundation and the framework that everybody else is built off of.
Yeah, not by myself, but
there was a team.
Founders of the field.
Kat, take the compliment. Take the compliment, Kat. You have a Lifetime Achievement Award. Take the compliment, Kat.
Thank you.
Okay, can we do that? Here, listen.
Thank you very much.
See that? We just take it and run with it. And so as you've moved into this, and I'm curious because I've heard you talk about this when we're together, and I don't fully know enough about it, which is you also are, the co-director and performing member of the Mopco Improv Theater, a founding member and current vice president of the Applied Improvisational Network. Mm-hmm. Wait a sec, don't stop there. Co-host of the podcast Performance Shift, the art of successful navigating change. So you're a busy lady, but what is Mopco?
I'm so happy to talk about Mopco. So, we do all this applied stuff. I work in business, but we also, my husband and I, have a theater company. So where we do performance improv, like Whose Line Is It Anyway kind of stuff, and full-length improvised musicals, really any kind of improv format that you can think of or that you've ever seen anywhere, we do something like that. We perform every Friday and Saturday night. We have classes. We have a very popular Monday night drop-in class. We're in Schenectady, right opposite Pareca's, for any of you who know, on North J Street. And yeah, it's just pure improv, and everybody's invited to come and play and learn and watch and be entertained. So that's Mopco. My husband, Michael Burns, is the artistic director, and he founded the company 25 years ago or so, I think. And then I joined in about 15 years ago soon after I moved to the area, maybe more than that, maybe 20 years ago or so when I moved to the area. And we now have a theater. We bought, some folks might know, the Toy Box, which was an illicit strip club in Schenectady. It was featured on the Jerry Springer Show.
What?
Yeah, and then shut down. They shut it down for illicit activities. Yes, exactly. Well, we bought it 7 or 8 years ago, and now it's an improv.
Because I've never heard of this.
Yeah.
What? Please tell me what. Listen, my show is, I don't care. Please tell me what illicit activities are like. I mean, that could be very wide.
All I know was that Jerry Springer had a show, you can find it, where he had the strippers and the town's council people debating each other on the stage from the Toy Box. It was shut down, I think, for, I assume, prostitution or.
Oh, okay. I mean that's an illicit activity.
I assume when we bought it, there was a giant pink hot tub upstairs, and there were fake bookshelves where they would hide the politicians when there were raids on the place.
Oh, yeah. I love every bit. That's a whole. God, I need to know who used to own that so I could talk to them. I would love to hear that story. That's a new one for me.
I will not mention their name on the podcast, but
I'll find it. Thank God for Google. We can find anybody if we need to. So you guys have a legit theater.
Yeah, it's a full-time theater. Mostly on Friday and Saturday nights. The Mopco, the Mop and Bucket Company, which is the name of the original troupe, performs some kind of improv. Right now we're doing a musical called Spontaneous Broadway. We're going to start Theater Sports, which is a franchised show created by a man named Keith Johnstone, where teams of improvisers compete. We have celebrity judges who come as Olympic-style judges and judge. You should be a judge for us, Sean.
I would so judge that.
You'd be a great judge for us.
I would so love.
We do a show called Life Game, which we do at our theater, but we also take on the road, where we interview people about their lives, and then improvise scenes and songs based on the interview with the person. So that's great for anniversary parties or retirement parties or lifetime achievement award parties. So,
well, I was going to add something I was just kind of hearing as you're saying this, and I know you and I kind of talked about this beforehand. I wonder, that would be an interesting improv date night.
Oh, it's the best.
Do people do that? That seems really scary to me. Hey, we're gonna go to people do the sip and draw things and all that. But is there what would that be?
I mean, the great thing about going to an improv show is we're in some ways we're the opposite of stand-up. We want to make our partners look good. We delight everybody. We do sometimes have audience volunteers come up on stage, but only people who are willing. We never put anybody on the spot. You never have to do anything that you don't want to do. So you can sit with a date and just laugh, but you can also offer suggestions for our scenes and songs that we do, or you can volunteer and come up if you want. So you can kind of calibrate your level. We also do classes and workshops around Valentine's Day. We often have couples, classes for couples, or
that would be fun.
Or classes for singles who want to meet people. It's a great activity for whether you're watching or playing, for getting to know someone. And
see, that sounds like a blast to me. And so you guys are live every Friday and Saturday night.
Friday and Saturday night. Every now and then we are dark on a Friday, or we have other people. We have a sketch show that comes in. Okay. We're going to start our storytelling nights again, where it's not improv. It's more if people know The Moth, or the sort of story, scripted, rehearsed stories that people share from their own lives, personal stories on a theme. So that'll be
a one-man show kind of thing.
Yeah, we'll have a variety of storytellers. So, for example, I think the next one's going to be our first one's going to be January 18th or something. I'm not sure that date's exactly right. But we've put out a theme, which is a fork in the road. And people can submit ideas for stories they want to tell, personal stories, true stories from their lives.
Wow.
And then I'll help sort of coach them and curate them. And we'll put a show together of 6 or 7 storytellers.
That takes like I don't know, like as much as I can stand, like I've stood, and we're getting close to closing things up, and I'll tell this real quick. Like I've stood in front of a high school graduating class. So North Penn High School in Pennsylvania is the largest high school in PA. It graduates about 1,100 kids a year. To put that in perspective, and I've stood in front of their awards night and handed out $150,000 check in uniform. One of the few times I've ever truly in a crowd sweated, where I was like, "This is big."
Yeah.
Like pulling into this high school looks like a community college campus, but I don't know if I could tell my story in an improv theater in that way, even with somebody coaching me through it, and feeling like, hey, it's a handful of people like I will probably never see again. But that kind of gets me to my next question for you, which is in that world, and you and I talked about it beforehand. What are some of the things? And we got a couple of questions here. What are some of the things where you've seen where you're like, and obviously you don't need names, but where you're like, oh, they're digging into some real shit right now. We might need get the hook, hook now. Like they're pulling into some shit right now. We might want to pause this.
Okay, I do have a story for you quickly about this, and I will say that I'll preface it by saying, one of the principles and mindsets of improv that we teach is to celebrate failure, right? If you're going to make it up, if you're going to trust your impulses in the moment, you have to be willing to have it go wrong, right? That's part of what we teach, and that's useful in any kind of creative endeavor, right? To be able to go like, I failed. So failure is part of it. So, and I just heard, was it Steve Carell or someone was talking about when he was an improviser and how he had a teacher who used to say, you got to love the failure, not just tolerate it, but you have to just like love it when it's going terribly wrong. So with that said, though, there is one time I can remember where I really was like, where it wasn't just like, oh, this scene is bad, people aren't entertained, but where I was like, oh no. And this was the situation. So it was a late night show that we were doing in New York City with Freestyle Rep that I mentioned before. And Ken Adams, I can name him, he's a very famous improviser in improv circles, created something called the Story Spine. He has a great book called How to Improvise a Full-Length Play. He's a brilliant improviser. So someone came up to us before the show and said, I want to propose to my girlfriend. Can you do it in an improv scene? And we said, sure, do you want to come up or we'll, have you? And he said, no. I want you to do it. You propose, but for me. So like, okay, we're improvisers. We say yes to things. So Ken is playing this guy and he gets his girlfriend up on stage. And he said, can we have a suggestion of activity? They said hiking or bike riding. So they rode their bikes through the mountains. They get there. The kid had given Ken a proposal to read in the middle of the scene. So they're doing the scene. The girl's improvising along with him. He gets down on one knee and he reads this, I've never felt so good ever since I met you. Will you marry me? And she says, I'm sure you're way ahead of me. No. And Ken, because he's such a good improviser, keeps going. Like he's improvising the scene as opposed to just going like, okay, like I don't know where our lighting improviser was. Like, that's okay, thanks, folks. But no, he's like, well, why not?
Oh, he's just digging.
Yes. I just don't feel that way about you. And he says, and Ken goes, is there someone else? And she says, yes. And he says, who? And she says, this guy at the gym.
Oh, shit.
And I'm like, we're all backstage going like, stop. What are you doing?
Oh,
what are you doing?
No, because Ken was loving every minute. Ken was just like,
he was like, I didn't know what to do. I felt like,
Oh,
oh, so it was horrific. We later found out that they had been dating for like 3 weeks or something, and this guy was like, he should never have done it. So he was like, so at least we felt a little bit not bad.
wow.
Oh, that was the worst moment that I remember.
Oh no, Kat, that is absolute glory. Because just listening to, because if I'm Ken, I'm like, I'm digging into every minute of this, and
You have an evil streak. I can tell.
It's not. You know what it is? I'm curious, folks. If you're out there watching, we haven't gotten a ton of questions. If you have questions for Kat, or you want to know more about what she's got on, again, it's Koppett.com, Koppett. We're talking about improv and how improv training for businesses. She's got her theater, the Mopco theater. That to me sounds amazing, especially because it's in Schenectady. I don't never go to that far on the other side. Like, I might go on the other side of the river. And listen, folks, if you're in the capital region, you know exactly what I mean. Like, if I told Kat, like, hey, Kat, why don't you come to Dinosaur Barbecue? She might be like,
Dinosaur Barbecue.
But it's a trip, isn't it? It's a trip.
Yeah, we're getting better about this, but the capital region is so balkanized. Like in California, in the Bay Area, like you travel 2 hours without.
It means nothing.
It's all the same. It's all local, right?
Yeah, man, not here. Like people are like, where do you want me to go?
Come to Schenectady.
Like Schenectady, I'm like,
come to Schenectady.
I'm like, God, it's way over in. It's like way over in Schenectady. That's
I was just in Troy twice this week.
Yeah, but I mean, I had to remind me. We do have a new favorite restaurant. I'm going to try to get them to be a sponsor because I love it. It's my new favorite. Have you been to Scarlet Knife yet?
No.
In Latham? Do you remember where the old Kmart in Latham was on Troy Schenectady?
Mm-hmm.
They put the Vent Fitness.
Yeah.
And now at the other end of it, completely left turn. Sorry, folks. Eat it up. You'll be all right. Is a place called the Scarlet Knife. It is so you've been to Jack's Oyster House, right? Back when it was open.
Yeah.
So you sit in Jack's and there could be somebody dressed like you coming out of a business meeting, very business casual, sitting next to a young couple where she's in a nice dress and he's in a suit, who's sitting next to somebody like me in t-shirts and a pair of shorts. And that was Jack's.
Yeah.
You never knew what you were going to.
I love that place.
Scarlet Knife is that. And they have a dessert room. That's Willy Wonka themed.
Oh.
And my wife and I went there this past Friday because we had one of our friends wanted to take Lucas with their son. I had lamb, he had truffle fettuccine, and then in the back room I had this thing they called the golden ticket, which was basically a mousse with chocolate and gold flakes on top of it. And she had their it was like an apple flambe. I don't know if your husband or you prefers. I had an old fashioned made at the table.
That's what I've been drinking lately.
Old fashioned made at the table.
Crazy.
And I mean, for the capital region, it was a little pricier for the capital region, but it was like a Yono type pricing. If you've ever been to Yono,
I love Yonos.
I love Yono. And the guy who's running it right now, 17 years working at the Wynn, working with guys like Wolfgang Puck and stuff like that. So he's legit. His name's Damien. He's legit. He knows his stuff. I'm sorry. Left turn. There's a chubby kid that lives in my soul, folks.
I am so there.
And I would love to hear your opinion on it. But it also kind of goes in my next thing. So all these years, theater, movies, all these things, I've always been fascinated by the craft table. Always been fascinated by the craft table. Because I feel like you hear some celebrities talk about it, and it's two things. And I'm curious of two things with you as we get ready to close this up. One is, what's your favorite craft table? Like was there like a craft table in anything you did where you were like, this is unbelievable? And what was on it?
I'm not that successful.
You never did anything where there was a craft table?
Definitely had craft service tables, absolutely. But they were like, I don't think I have a good story of it. It was like food, like salad and pasta.
Nothing crazy.
I wish I could improvise something. There was a roast pig. But
succulent pig for everyone who can buy.
And I'm sure I have actor friends who would have good. This is my next poll question to my actor friends. What's the best thing you ever had at a craft service?
I would like that. And then my next question then is, if you had a rider, like this is Kat's rider, and if you don't know what a rider is, folks, this is what like celebrities or anyone who's like when you go see these talkers on stage, anybody who does this stuff, they have a document that says these are things that they want and they need to be presented with these things, or they're just not going to do it. You're violating their contract. Like, what was it? Somebody wanted green M&Ms. Was it?
Yeah,
like,
you know the story about that, right?
Was it Kiss? It was bullshit. They just wanted to see if they would do it.
Kiss or something. I want to say U2 maybe.
Was it?
I don't know. I'm getting it wrong. We could look it up. But you know the reason they told the story of that, of the wanting the green M&Ms. They had a show that was very technically complicated, and if it didn't go right, they could get hurt, right? Like they had moving things and explosions, explosives and things. So they put in the middle of their contract this rider about the no green M&Ms or no brown M&Ms, because they wanted to test whether the contract had been read in detail.
Okay.
And so they could go into the dressing room, and immediately if they saw, oh, there are green M&Ms in the bowl, they'd know that they had to be careful, or they had to go through everything and recheck it because people weren't looking at the details of the contract.
So it's brown M&Ms and it's Van Halen.
Van Halen.
It said, I pulled it up real quick. The story being told is, and you can see an actual copy of the rider, but the release of the Van Halen album with David Lee Roth behind the microphone to get Diamond Dave to go in front of a camera, official, But yeah, it was Van Halen, and it was the brown M&Ms in their rider. And I'm just always curious. So what would be Kat's rider thing? What would be the thing that you would want in there?
These are excellent questions. I think I would like to be able to bring my cat and my dog.
Ooh.
So like a nice little room for my pets.
Oh, do they get their own rider? Your pets?
I think my rider is, we need, safe space for the pets, some little beds, maybe some toys, maybe some.
Like it. So the pets get their own.
I'm gonna be really, that's about my level of. I don't need a lot of. I'm pretty easygoing. I'm pretty flexible improviser. I don't need a lot of stuff for myself, but it would be nice to have especially since COVID, I've gotten used to having them around while I do stuff.
I like, and if you ever join us on our hour, folks, if you want to do our hour, trust me, Paul would love to have everyone show up and just explode his head. That's Wednesdays, and you can see Kat's cat, because Kat's cat is a black cat. This is probably one of the first times I've seen her where the cat didn't walk in the middle of the screen at some point in time.
She's right over there sleeping. I think that's the time of day. She's a little less.
It could be. So now, if somebody wanted to touch base with you, maybe they were looking to have you come out and do something, travel with them. Look, you could have a travel rider. Like if somebody, you didn't have a rider for Meta or nobody. Like, look, I need my Facebook like completely unjailable or something.
Oh, that would be good. I could have asked for a lot of things.
Like you had a shot there. But how can people get a hold of you? How can they see what you got going on, Kat?
Well, you have it in the banner, Koppett.com. You can get in touch with me just at kat@koppett.com. Mopco is mopco.org. You can find out all about our shows and classes and everything that's going on. Don't go to mopco.com unless you want cleaning supplies. It's mopco.org. And we have a New Year's Eve show. If anybody's doesn't like going out late, we do have a 10 o'clock show, I think, but we also have a 7 o'clock show. It's an hour long. It's great for families and kids. We drop the ball at 8 o'clock when it's New Year's and
cool.
Resorts somewhere. I think that's the only place. So come on by.
I think that would be a very interesting New Year's Eve, because we all do so many different things. But I like the idea of that. Well, look, folks, make sure you're going finding Kat. You can also find her, if hopefully she doesn't get mad at me. Go look on LinkedIn. It's Kat, K-A-T, Koppett, Koppett. You can see what she's got going there. If your business is looking for some way to grow, they're looking for new training techniques. Trust me, Kat is the person that you need. Very, very different approach. And it's an approach that we can all kind of get behind. She's not going to make you jump on stage. If you're finding me through Kat or Kat through me, make sure you take the time, like, share, follow. It might sound cliche, but those little bit of things on YouTube, on Apple Podcasts, really, truly do make a difference. And if you're enjoying what you're hearing, make sure you join us next week. We have a heavy, like, Kat, my show goes from one extreme to the other. So you're doing improv, and next week we've got a heavy metal band called 3 Sixes, SIXES, Sixes. And they just released 2 singles that are getting ready to come out in 2025. They are, I see, and this is, I love different bands. I love how bands get into things. Just to give you an idea, the 3 Sixes, they're crushing their new single, Reject Control, which shipped to all streaming platforms on November 5th. And then they've got a new release called Welcome to the New World Order. I've always found this, and I say this about heavy metal bands. Like, people like to get into, like, oh, this band is really into the environment. They're really, if you want to find bands that really talk about world issues, political issues, go listen to heavy metal bands. Iron Maiden was doing that before, in the modern age, before anybody realized what they were doing. Go listen to heavy metal and you'll be like, wow, they're really talking about like some heavy political stuff. And we're going to have them on next week. We're going to have the members of 3 Sixes on. We're going to talk about their new album. And the biggest thing that I always find interesting is that process of making an album, taking what you have mentally creative, and just like Kat does with improv and presenting it to the world for people to see, this is taking your music and literally laying your soul to bear to say, hey, this is how I feel. Hopefully you like it too. So we got that next week. Now, Kat, and Kat's going to be there. She's a big heavy metal fan. You should just see her. She's like regularly, like I see it. Like give it up, Kat. Get there it was. Love it. Oh, I love the hand gestures. Now, Kat, I know you've listened to all. I have to figure out what the number is. We're at like 260 something.
Yeah.
I know you've listened to all the episodes, everything, and don't log off afterwards. We just got to talk for a couple of minutes after the show. But the guest always gets the final word. So what's the final word tonight, Kat?
As human beings, we are improvising all the time. And if we can just let ourselves trust our impulses and take risks and celebrate failure and listen to each other, the world will be a better place.
Alrighty, folks, be sure to push your stool in. This has been a Second Front podcast presentation found on Apple, Spotify, and wherever podcasts can be found.